In Team Fortress 2, there's this thing, it's called Great Anal Pain, and it mostly stems from the Pyro. The titular arsonist can't be arsed with any of the newfangled contraptions like aiming, thinking, looking, and is mostly concerned with shitting out damage like there's no tomorrow. Fun fact, this class is bad, but I'll keep up the pretense of how annoying and good Pyro is for a little while. Don't worry, Pyro fans, otherwise known as fucks, I have a legitimate praise for both the players and the class. Also a lot more saltiness, but what can you do? As I try to find the best objective class in Team Fortress 2, it becomes hard to rank the damage dealers against one another. That's because everyone has a really specialized role with very particular strengths, except for the Pyro. Pyro has, I'll say, amazing damage up close, but I don't mean that, but we'll get back to that later. In addition, he's the only class with a very consistent damage over time dealing weapon, which sounds good, but we'll get back to that later. Finally, he, she, it, ape is probably the best class to play if you possess no hands, as you probably could get away with just bashing your forehead into a button that moves forward and shoots. That's only partially a joke. Ease of access is the name of the game, but this is actually a disguise for some of the least intuitive, weirdest, and hard to adapt to mechanics in all of TF2. Basically, the short of it is that the skill floor is lower than my balls, and the skill ceiling is higher than my usage of apes in my videos, but we'll get to that later. Before we continue this arbitrary and pointless conversation, I'll lay down my class evaluation rules. Firstly, we jaunt through casual viability, where Fireman will shine bright. Secondly, we trek through the competitive woods, where his hopes of winning this competition will burn down. Finally, I mentioned man vs. machine gameplay, where the Pyro has some of the most interesting utility out of the classes. Before we begin, and I start swearing, it's good to discuss options that the Pyro possesses in combat. For example, Heavy is good at medium to close range, with corners helping aid his strengths, and Demo is good at medium to long range, with surprising ability depending on map geometry. Spy is good if the enemy has gone to take a shit or something. Pyro is good if you're 2 feet from something, and otherwise he sucks one of the following: nuts, ass, dick. Take your pick. His performance in most cases is totally not sick. Bars. To illustrate this lack of attack options, let's go over the weapon selection. Flamethrower. It's never worked in any meaningful way, and what I mean by that is that it's really not good, and they've tried a lot of things to make it less not good, but it has never been good. The weapon shoots particles. They work in such a way that I don't think I can reasonably explain them. It's almost magical computer programming that these things function. Basically, when you hit the mouse button, it shoots a big douse of the particles out in a cone shape. This cone has a lasting time of existence, and while they exist, they just sort of sit in the air and live a nice life, raise a family, hit players who are nowhere near them, you know. In fact, in a straight 1v1 between two Pyros, the one backing up in a straight line and firing will always win. This is because it's laying a large stream of particles in the air, which just lays a big dick on the other player's face. So what's this all mean? I can't believe I wrote that in my own script. It means that this class is not the best class in Team Fortress 2, but we'll get back to that later. So now that we all have no idea how flame particles work, actually, I can tell you how almost none of these flamethrowers differ from one another. Some of them allow you to use compression blast, which can bounce enemies and projectiles backwards. This sounds good, but when programming how this worked, Gabe Newell sat down, shat into his computer disk drive, and then went home. Man's a billionaire now. Air blast doesn't work right, and never has. They've attempted to make it better and more consistent, and they ended up fucking destroying it, so here we have nonsense ability that doesn't work, and when it does work, it's pretty much uninteresting. In many ways, air blast is the signature ability, which is funny because it didn't actually exist when the game came out. Cool! In some ways, you have some flamethrowers that make the job of W plus M1 easier done, allowing you to overrun anyone, unless they have their brain set to on, otherwise they're gone. Bars. Secondaries involve a shotgun, an always good weapon, as well as the flare guns, and sometimes good weapons. These are basically what a Pyro uses most of the time, since they allow you to harangue people at a distance. This tactic almost never results in a kill, since you'll deal tiny damage over time to a variety of people, who, if they had any of the following, they'll survive. The melee category has utility-based options, and if you're ever really whacking someone with a melee weapon, you messed up somewhere, mostly on the character selection screen. Okay, that's the rundown of weapons generally. So, how does the class hold up in casual? God, this script writing fucking sucks really well, but that's because no one has any idea what they're doing. You don't have to aim, don't forget, basically allowing anyone on any continent at any age to play Pyro. Now, of course, I'd rather have someone with competence than a baboon playing the game with me, but there's only really one skill that has grand importance. Patience is literally your only survival tactic. Scenario A, there is a fuck of heavies on the other side of the map. You can run at them, but you can imagine how well that'll go. But wait, they are slow in more ways than one, so instead of rushing them down and giving them the advantage, you can just wait for the perfect opportunity as they round a corner or come into a room to ambush them. This probably won't work either, but at least you'll be able to do some damage this way. Scenario B, there's the aforementioned aforementioned heavies, but now you're on a map where no one is ever going to come near you in a tight space. The next step is to go back to spawn and change class. The sad truth of the matter is that Pyro is not a good class in a heads-up fight, unless no one can aim. If you're invincible due to a medic supercharge, then suddenly you're absolutely horrifying, but then again, who wouldn't be? Sniper? Yeah, probably not. You have to play Pyro with the concept that you're going to punish people who wander near you, in sort of a Venus flytrap mindset. Problem is, you're really wide and easy to see coming. Basically, you're just a constantly visible big spy. Having the ability to surprise people is a good benefit, but literally needing to surprise people to do anything is a large dump in my rump. They've tried to give the Pyro more to do, but it always ends up making next to no difference. Speaking of making next to no difference, Comp Pyro can be summed up in one word, but we'll get back to that later. In 9v9, you have the helper role, which is quite funny considering that the Pyro is portrayed as an enigmatic killing machine, but whatever. But there is a really important role for him to fill, and that's making sure Mr. Snake in my team's ass is not alive. Since you can set things on fire, making them on fire, looking for spies who are invisible is a good use of your time. No one will be fighting you deep in your team side of the map, so you're safe to look around and be a big team player. This is what you must find fun in order to play Pyro competitively. Other than that, since people will be able to aim very consistently, you are best off just sitting behind your combo and playing with yourself, waiting to find spies, warding off stupid shit. The biggest functionality that Pyro has is denying Ubers from doing anything to your team, since you possess that handy, barely works air blast. Simply mash right click until you die, and you'll be the big hero again. Other than this, it can be kind of a drag. You don't get many big moments unless there's a huge pit involved, and you manage to reach the group of actively killing you people and shove the whole of them into the hole. In 6v6, you only see Pyro if you're hanging out on your last point in some of the most dire scenarios ever, where you're down a lot of players, you have no Uber charge advantage, and you need to desperately shove invincible players into a nearby wall. It's always a bad sign when you have to bust out the Pyro. The one word that sums it up was bad. For man versus machine, I have two words that mean nothing to most people, but they are Kit Pyro. Use this stupid ass gun, sit behind the team, and just absolutely shell the team. You'll deal so little immediate damage, but they move like pinballs. Now you sit here with infinite ammo and I said absolutely again, absolutely demolish this game. It's almost ridiculous how good Pyro is for this format, between dealing the most damage to tanks compared to everyone else, to randomly having some of the best secondaries, to being able to reset the bomb in more holes. Pyro is a very hole-based class, actually. You know, it likes holes, is an asshole, has a whole lot of nonsense. Sometimes I wonder if I have no brain, but at least I'm not a Pyro main. Bars. Anyway, as my brain degrades into a whole mess of hole-related dialogue, let me give my verdict about this class. It is not in my top 4, but it's better than some of the other ones we've covered, to be fair. With power that can be frightful in the weirdest scenarios, with all kinds of helpful kit, the Pyro is a real supporter. Plus, I can't be too harsh to what most new players gravitate to. But it's because of classes like this one that the Pyro can't top any kind of list, but we'll get back to that later. Next time, because the video's over. Goodbye!